So for this video, we're actually going to cover some variations on the hand-foot crawl, also known as a bear crawl. For this first one, this is actually one of my favorites. You're actually going to need a band. You don't need the strap for the hips here if you don't have it, but you're going to attach it to a functional trainer. And then essentially once you're set up, you're going to have that resistance of not only the band, but the weight as well. You can see that I'm pulling this weight forward. Keep in mind that that usually caps out. So as far as the distance, it will be a little bit shorter, but then we usually just go for a set number of rounds with that. We want to make sure that the hips are down, the knees are bent and close to the ground. There's a tendency for people to shoot the hips up the second they get loaded like this. This is going to put a greater emphasis on our legs because we're being pulled back. Our quads specifically have to fire more to pull our body forward. This mimics more the intent of the movement, which is actually one of the ways that we manage a hill that we run up on. We don't want to necessarily run straight up a very, very steep hill. We can drop down to that hand-foot crawl once we're there. So as we do this, a handful of things that we want to make sure we're keeping in mind: keeping the hips down, knees close to the ground. We want to make sure that we're also keeping the shoulder blades flat up against the back, and we're not actually winging those out. Usually I want my elbow pits facing forward, and the way I achieve that is just by slightly turning out my hands so that they're not just directly straight, they're turned slightly out. And as I do that, I can actually create torque in the shoulder, which allows me to then load my shoulders better. For the second one here, I use this as a corrective. You're just going to need a yoga block. What you do with this is you put it on your back, and it forces you to then slow down the movement. And this is very, very important, especially for people that are just starting with the hand-foot crawl, is that they want to rush through the movement. In MoveNet, we say speed hides inefficiencies. So once we actually tell them to slow down, this is where you're going to see the breakdown in their form. So especially going backwards. So as you start to slow this down, the form can actually get a lot better, but you can actually kind of force the body to recognize where it needs work. So I use this not only, like I said, for the correctives, but I can actually use it also to make the movement just harder, right? Because as you slow that down, we are asking the body to have more control. And then you're actually going to be in this a lot longer. So if you're just initially doing this and you start somebody out, or you do yourself, you might choose a shorter distance that you're going to start with instead of a longer distance that you may have been doing without anything. It forces my hips to stay down, so I can't push my butt up. I can't shift my body a lot with this, because then that block's going to fall off, and we don't want that. Now, if I want to take it up a notch, I actually use a foam roller. This thing rolls, right? So I have to not only keep my back pretty set, but I also have to make sure that as I'm going through this movement, I have a lot more control, even more so than the yoga block. You have to have that control as you move forward, and more specifically as you start to come backwards here, right? A lot of people rush through that coming backwards here. And this is where you can actually start to see a breakdown in form. I can actually see here that my shoulder blades are winging out just a little bit, and I wouldn't necessarily want that, right? But this is how I can work on that, by maintaining that position through the movement and being conscious of it. Next up, we're actually going to work on adding a little bit of more dynamic based movement to it. So with this, you need a sandbag, and what you're going to do is a reach and pull through, okay? So this actually would serve a function, right? If I'm actually have stuff with me and I'm in a position where I need to crawl under something or kind of crawl through something, but I have stuff with me that I couldn't necessarily just load onto my back, I could actually then utilize this to do that pull through, that drag, right? So I really like this one, and this isn't super duper heavy. If I wanted to make it more difficult, I could scale that and just add more and more weight to the sandbag. And even if I don't have that sandbag, I mean, load up a backpack with some stuff in it and you can drag that, right? A lot of the stuff you can do at the house. If I don't have a yoga block, I could put a light, small book on my back, right? So very, very diverse, kind of useful version of the hand-foot crawl that I really, really like. And then the last one, I'm going to show two different iterations of this. The next one's going to be a slow version of it, is actually what we do in MoveNat, which is eventually progress to hand-foot crawl on just some 2x4s that we use for balance work. Eventually you can progress into doing this on a rail or a tree, for instance. With this though, 2x4s are $1.50, so $2 at Lowe's or Home Depot, so you can grab a couple of those. I'm just showing forward. So for this, typically I'll just go forward. Every now and then I might attempt the going backwards, but right now I'm really just focused on going forwards with this. It's still a contralateral pattern, so those opposites are still moving together. The hand moves before the foot on this one. There's a lot of outside like stabilization going on with this. Because my feet and my hands are closer together, my body wants to tip and fall over. So with this, I'm actually having to stabilize the body a lot more than just a regular hand-foot crawl, right? So this is more intense and more of an advanced movement. But hopefully that gives you guys some ideas from sort of different variations on the hand-foot / bear crawl that you can do. If there's anything else you guys want to see, let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video, and check back for more videos here soon covering some different scales and progressions with all this stuff.